Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Emily Hiles, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Commander Peter Barnes. This evening, we warmly welcome Mr. Bob Goff, Vice President, 2nd 30th Australian Infantry Battalion Association, Mr. Graham Wilson, Archivist, 2nd 30th Australian Infantry Battalion Association, and their accompanying delegation. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where family and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved. And here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Lieutenant Percival Webster Clemens. Percival Clemens was born in Melbourne on the 9th of June 1919, the son of Sir William James Clemens and Lady Bella May Clemens. Percival's father was a senior Australian public servant who would go on to serve as Secretary of the Department of Home and Territories, Secretary of the Department of Home Affairs and Public Service Commissioner. A street in Canberra's central business district was later named in his honour. Known as Mick, Percival arrived in Canberra in 1928 with his family and established a home in the suburb of Red Hill. Young Percival attended Canberra Grammar School and was a member of the Canberra Amateur Swimming Club. He went on to follow in his father's footsteps, becoming a Commonwealth public servant. In 1938, as his father was conducting an inquiry into the high cost of living in Canberra, Percival Clemens joined the local militia unit, the 3rd Battalion. By the advent of the Second World War, he had reached the rank of Lance Sergeant. In June 1940, shortly after his 21st birthday, Percival Clemens enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force. Appointed acting corporal, he joined a training battalion and entered camp. In November, Clemens transferred to the newly established 2nd 30th Battalion, joining his unit as it formed and began training at Tamworth. The unit's first commander, Lieutenant Colonel Blackjack Galligan, trained the men hard, and they became known as Galligan's Greyhounds. With Clemens' military background, he was soon promoted to acting sergeant before being appointed a commission, becoming lieutenant on the 13th of December 1940. Towards the end of July 1941, Lieutenant Clemens and the bulk of the 2nd 30th sailed to Singapore. While early training had prepared the battalion for warfare in the Middle East, concerns about Japanese intentions in the Pacific had forced a change of plans. The men were now to carry out garrison duties along with the rest of the 27th Brigade, which had been dispatched earlier that year. Arriving in Singapore in August 1941, they established camp at Changi before moving north to Johor in September. About this time, Clemens' father died in Australia after an operation. There would be little time for grieving, however. Just before midnight on the 7th of December, at the same time as the attack on Pearl Harbor, Japanese forces landed at Singora and Patani in Thailand and Kota Bharu in northern Malaya. The Japanese advance through Southeast Asia was fast. The invasion advanced along the Malay Peninsula, pushing back British and Indian troops. Before 4 p.m. on the 14th of January 1942, Bravo Company of the 2nd 30th Battalion ambushed Japanese forces at Gemech Bridge. This was the first AIF attack against the Japanese. Lieutenant Clemens, who was commanding 13 Platoon Charlie Company, and the rest of the battalion were located about 6 kilometres to the rear, in front of Gemas. They engaged the Japanese the next day, acting as a shock absorber, and inflicted as many casualties as possible before falling back. The action was successful. Japanese casualties were thought to number about 1,000. The 2nd 30th suffered 20 killed or missing, believed dead, and 58 wounded. Success, however, would be cold comfort for Lieutenant Percival Clemens, who was killed during the fighting, with accounts attesting that he'd been shot through the heart. As a result of continued fighting, his body was not recovered. He was 22 years old. Percival Clemens' original war medals were issued to his mother. With the death of her husband still fresh, she was so distressed at the loss of her son that she destroyed them. With no known grave, today Percival Clemens is commemorated at the Singapore Memorial, which bears the names of more than 24,000 casualties of Commonwealth land and air forces who have no known grave. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, amongst almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Lieutenant Percival Webster Clemens, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of our director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.